have soils that are very poor in organic carbon. And I put this as the Cinderella of agricultural climate studies because we always focus on the weather parameters that change and how that impact the evolution of a plant. But we sometimes don't consider how the soils might be changing because of these climate shifts and how water is actually made available or not for the plant to grow. Veneto is one of the regions in Italy with the largest loss over the last 10 years, mostly because we went from an agricultural landscape to a urban landscape. And the projections are showing that we might lose further this organic carbon, for example. I work in the irrigation system, and I want to highlight this image to explain the fact that dealing with water in Italy doesn't mean just dealing with one single entity. We have the European Commission that gives rule, we have the municipality that gives rule, we have basin authorities that gives rule. Irrigation is somehow outside of all of this, but at the same time, it crosses every single entity in terms of regulations or rules. Mostly in Italy, irrigation is dealt with what we call land irrigation consortium, which is a different type of organization with different rules, with different sets of parameters to consider for irrigation, and somehow it has to deal with the municipality level up to the river basin level when it's time to use this water and make it available for agriculture. Water is given by concession. There is a set amount that can be taken for irrigation from a specific source, and this amount must respect the minimum flow in the rivers, for example. There is a license to use the water. The abstractions might be suspended when there is a drought. So whether the fact that it is allowed to be irrigated, you cannot irrigate it because there's some ordinance that forbids it. There is a payment on concession fees for water, and these licenses don't account for the fact that farmers use different techniques for irrigating. They don't account for the fact that climate might be changing because they have a length of about 30 years, so the current licenses are based on 30 years ago climate, for example, and they don't consider how the irrigation will change in the future. So if you think about the fact that irrigation must coexist with the water quality and the river flows, here you have a map of the vulnerability of climate of this region as compared to the irrigated landscape of northern Italy in blue. So the whole region is irrigated, and if you overlap the water quality indices from blue, good quality, to red, bad quality, you can see that most of these areas vulnerable to climate, they must also compete for resources in terms of quality of water, whether or not we irrigate our vineyards. We have different techniques. Normally, people irrigate when they want. The thing is, it should be driven by soil moisture, so you should be irrigating to get the maximum production when the plant actually needs it. The reality is that in many locations, irrigation is fixed. You get the water on specific days, and then you don't get the water for the following 10, 15 days, because it's turned. And the reality when you talk with the farmers is that they're gonna tell you, I'm gonna irrigate today because I don't know if I'm gonna get water I know I'm not gonna get water for the next 15 days. So you have large volumes of water that are given to the plants, especially if you come up from a dry year for the following year. Just because you have it, you need to use it because you don't know if you'll have it for the future. We have different irrigation techniques. And maybe from the image you can understand that if we use the top version of irrigation where the vineyard is kind of like a rice field, you might have a volume of water used that it's not the same as drip irrigation in the bottom. Mostly when you have a water source, you can supply irrigation in case of droughts if you have machinery or not. When I spoke about the 80% of irrigated vineyards, we are mostly talking about drip irrigation already equipped in the vineyards. When you talk about climate change, Veneto recorded in the last 20 years about half a degree by